What is shaking, y'all? It is episode 22. That's right, 22 episodes of the Golden Mic. It's your boy, Mark Cordone. We are here with positive psychology coach, with world changer, with
Wow.
Barcelona native, UK born, Lisa
Thank you.
Avery. And Lisa today is really going to be talking about something that is near and dear to so many of us. Looking at our work as vocation, our work as calling. When you get out of bed in the morning, are you the type of person that is like, yes, I was called to do this work? And it doesn't matter if, even if I was making $1 million, I would still be doing what I'm doing today. We're going to be talking about stuff like that today. But before we go into that, I got two things. You know this book, Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams by Bruce D. Schneider. I only got a couple more left, y'all. I'm starting to mail them out this week. The book is awesome. I'm going to start my second run of it in terms of reading. We're going to have a reading group in the Beyond Resilient group. So all you got to do to get this is A, you got to go to Barnes & Noble, pick it up for $25. B, you got to go to Canada, get it for $30. C, you got to go to Lisa's house because I'm mailing this to Barcelona, and you got to take it from Lisa and have a sangria with her, right?
That's the deal. That's the deal, Mark.
That's the deal.
That's the deal.
Or D, option D, you can join the Beyond Resilient group and just simply put that you want the book, and I'll send it to you. It's a real book. It's not electronic. There's real words in it. It's not a sham.
Wow.
I just want people to have this book. The other thing too is that if you're willing to put in like $1 or $2 so that we can get this to folks who may not be able to spare an extra $25 right now, but could use the knowledge, the wisdom, the insight, we're making the world a better place. So that's the first thing. Romar, good to see you, brother. Stick around. It's going to be a good one today. For those of you who have not met me, my name is Mark Cordone. I am a positive psychology coach. All that means is this. It's about feeling good and functioning well. Or if you're Lisa, it's about feeling good, the hedonic part of happiness, and functioning well, the eudaimonic part of happiness. That equals flourishing. My job as a coach is to create a space for you to flourish day in and day out, whether it be at work, whether it be as an elite athlete, whether it be as someone who is not sure where they want to go and making a transition, whether it be someone who's going through academics right now. We all could function at an optimal level and feel good. So, Lisa Avery, are you feeling good and functioning well today?
I'm feeling fabulous, Mark, because your exuberance is just out of this world. Absolutely. Wow. What contagious exuberance you have. Wow. I'm in awe. You know, Mark, I consider myself to be a very energized, optimistic, upbeat person, but my goodness, you really are a rival for that. So this is going to be a bit of a competition, I think.
Well, and the thing that's really funny is that we talked about this before, and both of us are like total social introverts, like behind that, yes. outside of things like this. So I have the question for all of you out there. If you're feeling good and you're functioning well today, give us some hearts. Give me and Lisa. Can you make a heart, Lisa? Give us some hearts.
Absolutely. Some hearts, please, girls and boys.
Give us some hearts, everybody. Yeah. Now it's Tuesday. Some things may not have been going like you thought they did. There have been some things that have happened that you're just having a day where you're just kind of getting by right now. You're not feeling that great. You're getting by. Maybe you're just a little cloudy right now and it's hard to function, or you're thinking about what your passion is, or you're reconsidering it. It's okay to have those days. Give us a thumbs up if you're having that day. just recognize that it's okay to have those days. Now, whether you're having a shitty week or whether you're having an absolutely amazing week, if you're optimistic, give us a big wow face. Lisa, can you give me a wow face?
Wow. I'm not sure if that's very wow, but well, that's my effort.
Wow, that was super wow. Everyone's wow is different. Hung, Steven, Phil Collins. Yes, the Phil Collins. The Phil Collins, the singer, is here. David, good to see you. Alhini, good to see you. Johnny B, good to see you. And David Blightus, good to see you again, brother. So, given all of, oh, by the way, $30 Canadian. Where in Canada? I don't know. It just says $30 in Canada on the side of this. So I'm guessing in your local bookstore in Canada, Stephen. But remember, Stephen, you can get it from us for free if you join the Beyond Resilient crew. So given all of that, Lisa, what's your story?
Sure. So let's go back to around post-university. So I graduated in about 2000, and I had originally studied languages because that was what I was supposedly best at. And, you know, in very much fixed mindset kind of mode, whilst I'd always been very, very interested in psychology and human nature, you know, as this kind of only introvert child, I'd spent most of my time just sort of watching people, sitting there in the corner, you know, and watching other people. But whilst I'd always really had that interest, I'd never really done anything about it until, well, I'll tell you now what happened. But so post-university, I had this language degree and I had no idea what I wanted to do with that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the sunshine for a month, for a couple of months, and figure out what I want to do with my life. So then I came over to Spain, started teaching English, you know, a couple of sangrias here and there, a boyfriend, an apartment, a job, and things just kind of, you know, things just were flowing really. And you see, at that age, in my 20s, in my early 20s, it was really about the hedonia, you know, it was the good times. I wasn't questioning my existence. I wasn't wondering what I really wanted to do with my life, if my life had any purpose. So things just kind of, you know, things were in flow. And then a few things happened, Mark. So my stepfather died, and this was an incredible guy that I'd sort of, you know, grown up with, living in my the pillar of strength, and he got a brain tumor and he died, and it was all very, very sad. And that was the first moment, Mark, because I was like 29 at this time. That was the first moment when I thought, goodness, I should really think about what I want to do with my life, because life can be kind of shorter, much shorter than we actually think it can be. And it can change from one day to the next. And that was really a kind of wake up call from my life of hedonia and just getting on with things and not really questioning. And that was my first existential crisis, you know, at the age of nearly 30, kind of, you know, just coming to the corner of 30. And very shortly after that, so I was in this looking kind of phase. I was thinking about who I was, what I wanted to do. And I had the very good fortune of stumbling across the School of Psychology here in Spain, where I started to teach. And that was one of those massive moments when you think, oh, hang on a minute. Shouldn't this have been my life? Shouldn't this actually be my life, doing what these people do? Is it too late? And so I got involved with organizing the first International Congress of Coaching Psychology, which was actually held here in Barcelona. And I did some of the interpretation with the psychologists. But once again, it was this feeling of, hang on, I want to be doing this. And so pretty shortly afterwards, I came across the degree, the Masters in Coaching Psychology and Positive Psychology. And it was that very minute, Mark, when everything for the first time ever became very clear to me. My strengths, my talents, my passions, they all became perfectly entwined. And that was it. That was me. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that I had found my thing and there was no turning back whatsoever.
Oh, that's amazing. That's totally amazing. So it sounds like so much of your life was very like non-linear. It was kind of like just kind of going on a path of just like, let's see what happens, you know. But it does sound like it changed based on the experience you had with your stepfather dying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think that's fair to say, Mark. And I think, from the research that I've done for my master's degree in looking at people who do find a vocation or do create their vocation, very often the catalyst for that is negative circumstance. It's the loss of a loved one, it's unemployment, it's the deep depression. But usually there's this soul searching moment, this existential angst, let's say, that really propels the person, that really pushes the person forward to look for something deeper, to look for something more meaningful. I think, it's inevitable that there's going to come a moment in our lives when we experience a loss that is so great that inevitably makes us think about our own death, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, by reflecting on our mortality, in fact, it gives us a perfect opportunity to search for something which really fulfills us, and I find it so incredibly sad to think that some people spend their working lives doing meaningless work, meaningless in their own eyes, because no work has to be meaningless, but doing meaningless work in their own eyes and just getting to the end of every day without actually having the feeling of accomplish what you really want to do with your life.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I'm even thinking about things right now. I'm thinking about when I used to be a part of university as well. And look at me speaking as if I've got a European, like I've got European sensibilities. I used to work at university.
It's glamorous. That's very glamorous, Mark.
Sounds very glamorous, right? But so the last 7 years of my life, I had been doing administrative work, and I was also teaching a positive psychology course. Brilliant. And so ostensibly, like, I was like super happy with the stuff that I was teaching, but then also there were I wouldn't say these are negative circumstances, but my son was getting older, and I wasn't getting to see him that much anymore. I felt myself getting older, like I couldn't do as much physically as I wanted to, and I still wanted to do physical things. And then also at the same time, as my parents were getting older, like I was really beginning to see a demise there. And I was, coming home from happiness courses, and I was probably the most unhappy person in the world. And what I used to think was a dream job, a vocation, suddenly was just work. It was just a means to an end. And I knew at that point, I knew that I couldn't be there much longer. And suddenly it became easier to take days off of work. Like my pinky would hurt. And so I'm like, ooh, I think I need to stay home from work today,
Absolutely.
If anyone out there is at a point right now where you're in sort of a questioning mode, or there's a negative circumstances that you feel is fueling you to think about something more, to think about a vocation, definitely give us a thumbs up or some hearts, whether it be live or in the replay. And if you feel froggy, if you feel like you're up to it, definitely let us know what you're thinking about, because you have an expert right in front of you that can interface with you right now. So talk to us about how things went from there. So, I mean, you're in Barcelona. You've got, you've got this degree now in positive psychology. You're in a beautiful place, which is a big deal, right?
Absolutely.
You have an amazing partner, right? And so, like, all the stuff is going down. Talk to us about what happened there.
Absolutely. So as you say, Mark, like the whole journey itself has been incredible. I have to say the 3 years of that degree were probably the most transformative years of my life in every single aspect, and probably the biggest takeaway from all of that positive psychology, which still is really useful for me today, it's to know that all emotions exist for a reason, even the negative ones. When I look back to what happened with my stepfather and to the pain we went through, knowing knowing that if at that time I had expressed those emotions instead of repressing them, expressing them as clearly, articulately, and precisely out loud as possible, they would have passed over so much more quickly. But instead, by bottling emotion up and repressing emotion, I think it does so much harm to people. So, probably my biggest takeaway from those 3 years was the need for every kind of emotion, and that to me was extremely powerful. And that to me, that has helped, since finishing the degree and now, trying to, get started as a coach, to get started, promoting this positive psychology program for schools on this entrepreneurial journey, so to speak, which isn't always difficult, which isn't always easy. Having that knowledge, having that positive psychology base has been absolutely transformative in every way, So what it's been like, in the last sort of 9 months since graduation, it's really been putting myself out there, doing millions of podcasts, speaking in this way and trying to really get people to understand what positive psychology is and isn't. It's no happyology. It's not just, positive emotions. Of course, they play a vital role, but it's everything else too. It's that sense of meaning. It's that sense of self-actualization, becoming the best version of yourself, finding the intrinsic motivation. There's so much in there that is useful and applicable to absolutely everybody. And I have to say, and I'm sure you pretty much agree, Mark, it transforms lives. It absolutely, on every single level, can transform a life.
It absolutely does transform lives. I think you said it much more eloquently than I. But the idea of positive psychology isn't about shits and giggles happiness, right?
No.
It's not about, or other folks call it like sort of this Pollyanna happiness, right? Where you only kind of look at one side of the world and you completely ignore other sides, like some of those other emotions. Now, let me ask you this. When you started embracing these other emotions, did you find yourself like, did you find that easy to do? Or because you talked about sort of as a person who repressed your emotions a lot at the beginning. Like
absolutely. Yeah. I think it's kind of society too. I don't think that we're necessarily as children encouraged to express our emotions. When we're angry, our parents try to calm us down, but without letting us articulate, the real cause for that anger. And anger, can really cover or can hide so many other emotions, fear, anxiety, I think I personally had never really had that vocabulary, had never really had that language around my emotions, which is something I feel very strongly about teaching children from a young age, to articulate, to express the emotion as clearly as possible. And, for me, Mark, as I say, I'm quite an introvert. I'm actually 40% extrovert and 60% introvert. So that's the precise breakdown. So for me, I'm much... Absolutely. I'm there on the fence. So I'm much more comfortable in listening to other people than actually expressing myself. So, it's kind of a big deal for me to come and say that, actually I have had a problem expressing myself emotionally. And to this day, at times I still do, because I feel things extremely intensely, And so sometimes I'm aware that I don't really want to overwhelm a person with the strength of that emotion. So
do you find people being overwhelmed sometimes when you try to, when you're trying to articulate the emotion to them?
Sometimes, but I think again, it comes down to how comfortable people around you are with their own emotions. Because any person who's
that's good. Yep.
For me, Mark, because any person who's really done that internal work, they've been on this introspective journey and know themselves quite well. They understand that in order to have a healthy human life, we need the full repertoire, the full spectrum of human emotions. And that it's not, there's no shame in feeling sadness and there's no shame in feeling angry, but we have to learn how to express them and articulate them as clearly and accurately as possible for everybody, for ourselves and for the relationships that we have with others. And I think that has been my biggest takeaway. It's okay to have a really crappy day and to articulate that. That's fine.
How you do the thumbs up. That's why we do the thumbs up, right?
Totally.
Let me ask you this: whether it be a kindergartner that you're working with, or let's say that you're working with someone who, a client that has just difficulty with expressing anger. What are some of the things, and for those of us who are watching, what are the things that you could say would help us with being able to articulate that emotion, because it is easier to
Yeah.
articulate the good, or the valued good, the perceived good
Absolutely.
emotions.
Absolutely, Mark. And I think, and it's a brilliant question, and I
Hmm.
think the first thing we have to do is to do some of that internal work.
Hmm.
So, for example, by finding out what our core strengths are, the brilliant resource that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with. So the VIA, the Values in Action Survey from the University of Penn. So you can take this questionnaire for free. It takes around 30 minutes, 240 questions. And at the end of that, you get the breakdown of your top strengths. I think
Hmm.
by getting to know what your top strengths are, by reflecting on what your core values are, you can actually use that information to think about the source of your anger. Because very often when you're angry, it's because there's a real transgression of your core values, So if my core value is freedom and I feel like I'm being constrained in some way, that's going to make me really, really angry, So I think by really getting to know yourself, what your strengths are, what your values are, you can really start to tap into the source of your frustration, because usually frustration comes because we're not making progress at the same speed that we expect to be making progress in some aspect of our life. So it's really getting to know yourself very deeply to be able to see the root, to be able to see the source of this frustration, because it's not usually what it seems to be. We usually have to dig a few levels deeper to get
Yeah.
to the real cause, And
Sure.
for me, Mark, when I see people who are frustrated and angry, it's usually because there's a really big gap between who they are or who they think they are and who they want to be. And it's trying to bridge that space between who you are and who you want to be, that is the important work of coaching and positive psychology.
That's awesome. Now, the getting to know yourself, I actually put up a if you want to take the VIA, there is a that's the link that I use to take the VIA. So you can take that for free. That's the way of getting to know yourself. Now, let's say that you understand that, because when you were talking about articulating your anger, right? It does make sense that the sender, the person experiencing the anger in the relationship, gets to know themselves, their strengths, digging deeper. But then if they are to articulate that to a receiver, there's a certain risk there, right? There's a certain risk that the receiver isn't ready. So how do you negotiate, a person being ready to send versus a receiver who may or may not be ready to receive?
Absolutely. And that's a brilliant question in light of the fact that, as you well know, Mark, the brain has this negativity bias. So
Yeah,
that's the way we've survived as human beings. If something were running towards us to eat us in the jungle, we had to be more aware of that than the beautiful trees and the fruit on the trees,
totally.
So we do, so we do have this real negativity bias, which means, that if our partner gives us, 4 compliments, but we get 1 negative piece of feedback, we're going to hone in on that negative piece of feedback, which comes to the point that when do you express anger? How do you express anger? It's really difficult, isn't it? But I think once again, it's knowing when a person is feeling in a very authentic place. They're very open. They're very willing to receive your feedback. They're looking for that feedback, because all too often, we give feedback when it's unsolicited, and that's not always the best way to go about this. For me, it's finding a time when things are relatively too much negativity going on in one relationship or one situation, where you can really have this kind of open, authentic situation from a non-judgmental standpoint, and being very, very careful with the language you use, both with your own inner voice, your own inner chatter, and what you articulate to that other person. I think it's fundamental, and being very, very aware of this negativity bias, because, that's what's going to stay in the person's mind for all the positive things you say. So,
Okay, that's awesome. And so I guess one more thing about that, because I'm so much, I love I love what I guess they call positive psychology 2.0, which integrates the dark emotions, right? The shadow
Me
emotions,
too.
right? So let's say that a sender has done this deep digging, right? And they realize that the person that may have been a source in the relationship of the anger
Mm.
will not react well to it. It could
Mm.
cause some really catabolic, explosive type of dialogue, right?
Mm.
Is it uh, can this is it enough for the sender to just do their own internal work and then, let's say, um, articulate that to somebody else who is non-judgmental, like a coach, like come to you and be like,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant question. And something
okay,
that's really useful, it's writing, it's journaling. There's a beautiful piece of research, a beautiful study, and it was found that if a person were to take 4 consecutive days, and for each of those days write freely on each of those days for 20 minutes, okay, don't really judge what you're writing, just
mhm,
write as freely and fluently as possible about a moment that you found very difficult, be that with a person, a situation in general, just a horrible traumatic event that you don't yet feel you've processed. Well, if you do that each day for 4 consecutive days, at the end of that period of time, you'll initially feel slightly worse, but a week, 2 weeks later, you'll feel significantly better. And what's incredible, your immune system will be raised. It will be boosted. So, there's a real physical, emotional crossover here. And I think that any negativity that we keep inside of us, that there's a price to pay for the body. And that's why journaling, keeping a journal is such a precious thing to do. It's such an incredible thing to do because not everybody feels comfortable to express that to a coach, to a friend. We're
sure.
very afraid of expressing a negative emotions. So I think there's a real power, there's a real liberation in letting go on paper.
So even the act of writing it down and articulating it that way versus
Absolutely.
um, uh, getting into a possible confrontational situation with the source,
Absolutely.
there's still work that can be
Absolutely.
done. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Absolutely. I kind of think that's healthier too, because you really have to process this yourself before you're capable of really processing it with anybody else. The
Right,
work has to come from the inside first.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a super happy person, right? So like,
Oh,
what angers you now? Like, I'm just curious. Like, what would anger you at this point?
thank you, Mark. That's really kind. That's a really, really kind thing to say. But as I say, I'm not always so positive and happy, and I can be moody too. But I guess to answer your question, probably what angers me is when I feel that my strengths and my values are being transgressed. So for me, kindness is my top
Mm,
strength. And so when I'm in a supermarket and I don't know, I open a door for somebody and they just ignore me, and this happens quite a bit over here in Spain, I'm like, okay. And I feel really bad. I take it, as a kind of personal insult because kindness is so important to me, and I try to give that to other people. And I know that we shouldn't do things just so that we get them back, but it's
sure.
important to me because it shows a consideration, a respect and love for other human beings. Mark, I love Barbara Fredrickson's theory, not
Yeah.
only broaden and build of positive emotions, but also of these micro moments of love
Yep.
and connection.
Absolutely.
You know, I
Yep.
feel that as a society, we focus too much on loving just one person, our soulmate, the right person. But in actual fact, we can create these incredible moments of love and connection with strangers in the street. And so I kind of find it sad and annoying when people choose to do the opposite. And that probably is what angers me and saddens me the most.
That that would make sense because anything that kind of if you have taken that VIA survey, there's sort of these core these core virtues, right? That if taken
Mm-hmm.
away from you, it's like you don't even have an idea. It's not your identity is gone when it's taken away
Exactly.
from you. And it
Exactly.
sounds like kindness is one of those things. And so even those little sort of things would be uh, some people would say, oh, that's a sensitivity that you have. But no, it's more so like pushing against the value, right?
I
I
think
love,
so.
yeah, well, I think so. Thank
I
you for
think
being
so.
kind to me. Um, I love that you also brought up Fredrickson's version of love, right? Because
Absolutely.
we so often think, and this is a hard transition now into love and
Mm-hmm.
relationships, right? This is so often thought of as the soulmate,
Mm-hmm.
the you know um it's the person that I'm seeing, or it's the relationship with family and friends. But technically speaking, these micro moments of love that Fredrickson points out, I think her book is called Love 2.0, right?
That's it.
Yeah, and so these micro moments of love are things that we have the opportunity to experience. For example, when I was walking around the neighborhood today, and I met a neighbor with their two dogs. His name is Chris. We just got to know each other, shared a few things. That was a micro moment of love,
Yes.
Versus, with, if I were in a long-term relationship, it still is living from micro moment to micro moment to micro moment to micro moment of love. It's not like you've found the right person and it's over. No, it's a micro moment of love. And I think even even what we do here on the Golden Mic, when it's you and I have never talked on before,
no,
but
we haven't.
Yeah, and I hope we talk again, but like it's straight up like micro moments of love in these shows. That's really what's happening. Oh, if you like this stuff, guys, look more into the work of Barbara Fredrickson, Love 2.0, and also talk to Lisa. She's a total positive psychology pro. So Lisa, we haven't even gone here yet, but I do want to ask from your perspective, what is positive psychology?
So the original answer would be positive psychology is the study of optimal human functioning. But as you say, Mark, this positive psychology, the second wave of positive psychology takes a much more inclusive approach, and we look at how we can integrate a sense of meaning, a sense of legacy, how we can integrate the negative, so-called negative experiences to really bounce back, to be resilient, to create that resilience, to create that, that push forward to pursue something better in the face of adversity. So positive psychology, for me, it's a very inclusive, it's an approach to human behavior, to human functioning, which really tries to draw upon the positive and reconcile with the negative, and not only reconcile with the negative, but really push a person forward.
Lisa, are you there? Okay, so I'm going to give Lisa a couple more seconds, because at least what I heard her saying, and are you guys still there? Give me. Okay, so she dropped out, so I'm going to filibuster till she gets back. So I from what I heard, the idea of positive psychology was this idea of looking at what works. And please come back, Lisa, because we're going to need your help to define positive psychology 2.0. And she's back. Thank you so much. Oh, Lisa, you're freezing on me again. Come on, pull through, internet. Okay, so I'm gonna keep talking, Lisa. From what I heard, the idea of drawing from the positive in order to move forward, that's what positive psychology 2.0 is looking at. And not only that, but the positive and sort of the shadow side of the positive. So Lisa, I hope you're there.
You hear me?
Yeah, are you there? Dang you, connection to Barcelona. We were having a good conversation. So I'm gonna keep going with what Lisa's gonna be talking about in a couple minutes, y'all. And if you're feeling this, like if you're feeling the positive psychology stuff, like this, the coolest thing about positive psychology, if you've noticed, is like this isn't really like new stuff that we're talking about. But what positive psychology is doing is that it's looking at it's looking at things that we used to think were sort of these home remedies for happiness, and it's looking at it scientifically. And so as it's looking at it scientifically, what they're finding is changes in the brain, changes in emotions, changes in people's perceived well-being, and they're finding that on a very large scale. So Lisa, please tell me that it's working right now. No. What happened? Okay, so we're gonna try it one more time, guys. Lisa is gonna show up one more time. Are you there, Lisa? Oh, I'm feeling good about this one, guys. I'm feeling super good about this one. Oh, now I feel like one of these like voyeurs who's just watching someone live their life. Lisa, Lisa, come back. So I think she's trying on her phone right now. I know that there's a couple viewers in here. Give me some questions if you got some questions. What is resounding for you? We talked about the idea of love 2.0, and loving in micro moments. We talked about the idea of negative emotions and understanding your strengths to get to negative emotions before you articulate to a receiver. Let's go through a couple things here. David, I was feeling it too, brother man. David Vlitis from Costa Rica. I was feeling it. We're on. So stoked to share your energy as well. Phil Collins, when you watch the replay, my friend, yes, the Phil Collins, when you watch the replay, we're going to have this all fixed up for you. Steven, Lisa, how are you? Yes, Lisa. Oh no, it's freezing again. No. Oh no. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna, Stephen, yes, it did freeze. Aaron, it's good to see you. Don't worry, Stephen, when you send in a request, I will push that through. John Burgard, Johnny B, thanks for watching, brother man. My biggest issues are the lack of these common that aren't so common courtesy, common sense, and common consideration. These are my triggers. What would you say that is a part of these core values? Well, Johnny B, what I would answer to that is, as Lisa comes back, Lisa, just jump in anytime.
Okay.
Perfect. So, wow, that was a long filibuster. So Johnny B just asked, my biggest issues are the lack of common things, right? That aren't so common, right? Common courtesy, common sense, and common consideration. These trigger him, right? These trigger him to go into sort of that negative space.
Yes.
What would you say? What would you say that is a part of those common virtues? Like, so what common virtues do those things have in common? Those uncommon common things. Oh, what is happening? Lisa, answer that one. We will come back to Cody here, who says, I'm highly interested in learning more about positive psychology. After 9 years in the Army and facing traumatic events with being injured, etc., I have a ton of self-discovery, which has put me on the path to learn about IPEC, etc. IPEC is a coaching company. Can you recommend a good book, course, or degree to learn more? She dropped out again, son of a gun. Cody, I would say that there's a couple good books that you might want to look into. especially since you've gone to the place of traumatic events with being injured. I think you might be interested in the idea of post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is the idea that your functioning gets even better after traumatic events, Cody. Amazon's got a few good books on post-traumatic growth. There's also a good book called Positive Psychology, The Second Wave, that talks about post-traumatic growth. And there's also a book that's more of a narrative that talks about post-traumatic growth. It's called Option B. So Option B, Positive Psychology, Second Wave, and then just looking up anything on post-traumatic growth. There's a lot of good things. Lisa. This is killing me. This is killing me. You're killing me. You're right there. You're so close to me, Lisa, but yet so far. Lisa, what do I gotta do? Come alive for me, Lisa. Lisa! Lisa! Oh, I guess I can't yell loud enough. But I hope that helps with you, Cody Hansen. Check out those books. Let us know how that works for you. Keep the questions going because we want Lisa to come back. I don't want to stop the show. Do you? Do you want to see more of Lisa? Of course you do. So you're welcome, Cody. You're very, very welcome. So while Lisa is coming back, what are some other things when it comes to positive psychology that you want to talk about right now? There's this idea. I'm glad that you brought it up, Cody. There's an idea of post-traumatic growth. So I want we can actually do an exercise right now for the folks who are watching. There's 5 of you in here and people watching on the replay. So when it comes to post-traumatic growth, which is a positive psych concept, think about your worst day, right? This day would be on a valency level of like -10, -9, -8, right? So I want you to identify that. If you're feeling froggy, write it in there, but you don't have to. So I want you to think about that worst day for you, right? Now, after thinking about your worst day, it could be the loss of someone, a car accident, when you lost your job, something like that. What was it that you learned or what did you grow from that day? What were the things that made you a better person as a result of that day? Right? So if you can actually answer that question, what your worst day was and how you grew from that day, you are actually showing signs of post-traumatic growth, especially if it's like -8, -9, -10 in terms of your experience scale, right? Now, there's something else I want to tell you guys about. There's something called post-ecstatic growth. And what that comes from is this is the notion that you can have amazing days and grow from them. So think about a day that was like the best day of your life, a 10, a 9, an 8 on whatever scale you have it on, right? So think about that best day of your life, right? Now, I want you to think about that day and what were the things that you learned or grew from as a result of that day? What did you learn from in terms of sitting on a beach with all of your family and just kind of watching the sunset? What was it that you learned from when your kid was born? What did you learn from the day that you had busted ass and finally received your diploma and you were walking across stage? What did you learn from those days that were just truly ecstatic for yourself? So what research would go and say is that we have post-ecstatic days. It means that we can grow without having trauma. We can grow without trauma, y'all. And so this is some of the research that positive psychology is looking at. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log off. I want you to stick around because we are going to do one thing with we're gonna do one thing with Lisa. We're gonna drop the golden microphone on her. She ain't going anywhere until we get this golden microphone dropped on her. And so I want you to stick around. I promise you we're gonna have more of these talks about positive psychology. You can tell it was getting really juicy there, and we'll definitely have Lisa back. But in a few minutes, we're gonna get these things settled down, and we're gonna drop the golden microphone on her. Okay? So I'll talk to you guys in like a minute. Okay? See ya.